In our fast-paced world, it's easy to get swept up in the currents that surround us. But we are the authors of our own life story, and we are infinitely capable of creating the change we want to see within us and beyond. Welcome to Shaping Freedom, a show where we explore and share practical ways to cultivate extraordinary life experiences. I'm your host, Lisane Basquiat. I'm a teacher, entrepreneur, and life strategist. After a career as a corporate executive, I embarked on my own path of entrepreneurship and focused on the human and spirit connection. I come from generations of trailblazing entrepreneurs, artists, healers, and champions of human dignity. This week, I'm joined by the wellness guru, founder, speaker, and fellow human, Tai Beauchamp. After leaving a career in publishing, Tai decided to pursue her entrepreneurial heart and follow her desire to help women of color to connect and care for themselves. We'll talk about Tai's journey from her impressive career in publishing to the founding of her wellness beauty brand, Brown Girl Jane, and why she decided to start her Instagram Live experience, Morning Mindset with Tai. We'll also examine the privilege of caretaking and how important it is to find a balance between our personal and professional lives, and how to weave through the complexities of growing at different rates than those around us. I had such a wonderful time talking with Tai, and I know you'll connect with her humanity just like I did. So I am really excited to be speaking with you, Tai, finally, Tai Beauchamp. And did I mispronounce your name?
No, Beauchamp is Beauchamp.
Beauchamp?
Beauchamp. My family says Beauchamp, but then, as you know, I am from the French Quarter of Newark, New Jersey. And so there are relatives that say Beauchamp too. So I am completely flexible. Very flexible on that.
The French Quarter of Newark, New Jersey. So actually, before we get into our interview, which I am very excited to get into, I'm actually going to ask you a question that I had I don't script at all. I have like a little couple of notes that I put down, and then like we get into it and we have our conversation. But I do have a question for you that just popped up.
Sure.
From where does the French influence in your name come from?
That's a great question. So as far as we know, it is a name that was given to us. But there is obvious physical kind of ideas around where the influence may come from, so we definitely know that there is some French ancestry, Native American ancestry, Black and African ancestry. But, my family migrated from the South. And as we understand it, there were multiple brothers who had come over from France and, purchased land and were around the Eastern Seaboard. And my family ended up in Newark, New Jersey, which is why I say the French Quarter of Newark.
Okay. I did not know that you were originally from Newark. That is new information. As you may or may not know, I've lived in New Jersey for over 20 years in Maplewood. And now I'm bicoastal between Maplewood and San Diego. And as I was kind of looking around and doing a little bit of research on you, I did see the Newark reference. And so I was like, oh, shoot, look at that. I did not know that.
I was born in Newark. And by the time I was born, my family, my mom and my grandfather and all of their siblings all went to the Barringer High School, which is the third oldest public high school in the United States. In Newark, but by the time I was born, they had migrated just a little bit north into the Oranges. And so, we do have that 280 connection and the Maplewood, South Orange, Orange connection, East Orange connection. And that is home for me. And my family is still in New Jersey, but they've since moved more central Jersey in the Piscataway area.
Okay, nice. So, let me tell you all who I'm talking to. Let's start with that, and then we'll get in a little deeper into this conversation. So I am very excited to be getting ready to have a conversation with the beautiful and lovely Tai Beauchamp, who is the founder of Thai Life Media, that hosts the Morning Mindset with Thai in LA once a month, the next one being on March 4th. And you're also the founder of Brown Girl Jane, a fragrance company. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Um, and what's most interesting for me about your story, Ty, is this that you have been a lead editor at some of the major publications that we all know about: Harper's Bazaar, Good Housekeeping, the Oprah magazine. I think everybody wants to have worked for Oprah. And then also 17 magazine, where you were both the youngest and the first Black editor, a beauty and fitness editor or director, I think, for 17 magazine. And what really interests me about your story, well, first of all, I think you're an amazing human being, a beautiful, beautifully amazing Black woman. We met through our mutual friend, Mashonda Chiffre, and there was just something about you that I was like, oh, okay, this lady's a human, and I love humans. And then later on, I went and sought out some information about you when we started talking, and I learned that you had a moment in your corporate career that led to you today being such a spokeswoman for an advocate for mental and emotional and physical health for women, and Black women in particular, I believe. And so, one of the things that this program, this podcast is about figuring out, like, what is the question that we can ask that'll help us to create a space of learning for the folks who are listening. Like, what is a question that you and I can uh, play around with that'll bring some learning, some healing, and some personal growth to those who are listening? And we're going to bounce this around a little bit, but the question that I thought about was, how do you reset after burnout? And burnout was a topic that I wanted to talk about at the end of last year. I was on Morning Mindset with you during the last quarter of last year. And the intention at that time was to talk about burnout. Uh, and then here we are. And it's like, let's talk about like the reset after burnout. But what I love, I'm going to stop talking now. And what I'd love to hear about from you is a little bit about your history, kind of how you got to that moment for yourself, back when you were working in corporate and doing other things. Maybe can we start there?
Absolutely. And thank you, Lisan. Like, I feel the same way about you.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's so incredible because, we're so blessed and so fortunate, you and I, and, people who have similar experiences where we're able to connect and meet all different types of fascinating people who might be fascinating on paper because of a title, because of a name, and that's wonderful. But when you said that what gravitated you toward me was my humanity, that literally makes me smile on the inside and outside because um, I think that that's what life is. And I'm actually working every day to be a better human, and a human that sees other humans in ways that sometimes they don't see themselves, and that can lovingly be a mirror. And I think that's my special gift that God gave me just innately and inherently, that now that I have awareness of it, I want to use it, and seek to use it in the best possible way and to his divine glory. So thank you for having me, my fellow beautiful human. And I love hearing you speak. It's kind of like, I'm like, do you sing? Do you sing, Lisan?
I think I do, but
Okay, well, let me just tell you really, really quickly. If you don't sing, our mutual friend Mashonda will tell you because she tells me not to sing all the time. So, so we actually have
I'll try it out.
try it out and tell me what she says, and then come back to me because she
Yes,
literally
I
is
will do
like,
that.
Ty. She just says, Ty, don't stop, and I'm like, sis,
I'm
sis.
going to belt it out the next time we are in a car together, and I'm going to see what happens.
I
Well,
want to
I'll
I
I'll
want
let
to
you know.
hear. I want to hear. Professionally, it's always been really hard for me to talk about, and not hard to talk about what I do professionally. It's just that I always felt like, in some ways, because I've had this wonderful, um, and by wonderful, I mean everyone's journey is wonderful, but I've had this, you know, flashing lights and illuminating kind of like professional journey, that I often felt like it was a veil in many ways. Sometimes a wonderful veil that protected me, sometimes a veil that let in beautiful light, sometimes a veil that covered or masked something that perhaps was underneath. But I felt like it was always a veil to who I was. And I say this now, even looking back as a 20 something year old when I started in media. I was fortunate enough through the introduction of my mentor, who is also from Newark, New Jersey, Ray Chambers, um,
Mm,
was able to um, land an internship while I was a student at Spelman at Good Housekeeping magazine. And I was very excited about it. I performed well. I did great, and I developed really authentic relationships. And so I was asked back to Hearst magazines, and then when they were launching O magazine, I started there about 3 weeks after I graduated Spelman. It's my first job out of school, and um, was doe-eyed and bushy-tailed and curious and excited and silly and not knowing all at the same time, but had some sense of poise because I was just grateful to be there. And I worked really hard. And I was fortunate because people saw my work ethic. They saw, how I showed up. And that led to me being recognized by some incredible women who saw me, right? And promoted me. Amy Gross, Ellen Levine, Gail King, and so I was promoted and fast tracked as a beauty director, which was kind of unheard of then, especially for Black women. I mean, there were very, 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 very few Black people in magazine publishing at the time. And, I think, quite honestly, looking back now, I think that that gave me something that I thought I had to prove. Um,
mhm,
and wanted to show up in that, not just for myself, but for my grandmother, my mother, my Spelman sisters, and all Black women that I knew or didn't know. I mean, like, it was like,
yes.
yeah. And, um, you know, I climbed very quickly and excelled, but that came with a lot of sacrifice. Um, that now as a 45-year-old woman, I look back and I go, wow, had I had some of the awareness that I do now, like what would I have done differently? How would I have navigated it?
Mhm,
But, I think it's very typical, or not atypical, I should say, for Black women, especially Black women during my time and even during this season, when you're raised by a single mom, your grandparents, and taught that you have to, show up for yourself. And unfortunately, sometimes you have to show up for yourself because other people won't show up for you. At least that's what they thought and that's what they shared. And
mhm,
so I think a lot
mhm,
of my inspiration, motivation, and drive actually came out of fear of, not being able to do or achieve or support myself. And actually, now that I think about it, I think, when we move in the world, the impetus and the source of the energy is what fuels it, right? And so that's
mhm,
also probably why I burned out, because it was coming from this place of like, how do I stay here? A fear of not being
right,
there. Um,
right.
but it also was a wonderful indicator and teacher to me then, that continues to kind of teach me now, that you have to be true to you. And also being true to you doesn't mean being true to any person that was your former self, because you're constantly evolving. And so I really got to a place, I got to a place and I was like, does this really mean all I thought it meant? And it didn't. And it was with that I said, well, how can I go and find and pour myself into meaning? And that led to me, working with my mentor's family foundation. That led to me consulting with brands. That led to me starting my company. That led to me moving in front of the camera as a TV host. That led to me, you know, starting even Morning Mindset and Brown Girl Jane, all of that kind of like, how can I be purposeful and intentional about what I leave in this world and how I show up in this world?
You mentioned this idea or this goal, intention to show up for yourself. At the time, what did that mean for you? The showing up for yourself then, and has that changed?
Yeah, I mean, I was so young. I mean, I became beauty director at 17 when I was 25 years old. Um, and so I mean, now, I am old enough to be a 25-year-old's mother. So like the thought of I'm like 25, um,
Yeah.
it meant something very different to me. I think then at 20, 25, 26 was when I really started to move into this burnout. I was having incredible experiences, but I was tired, like physically tired. I was, because,
Hmm.
and because I center Black women as a Black woman, in my philosophies and my thoughts, like in my experiences. As a 26-year-old, I loved, going out and having a great time. I loved being on the scene. I loved getting invites to party. I loved dressing up. I loved all those things. And yet I still knew that that wasn't all of me. And um, the burnout was trying to keep up with one side or dimension of yourself and not nurturing the other one. And that's what I
Hmm.
now just define as like the equation that leads to burnout. Like, when you're trying to support only your familial life, when you're only starting to support your professional life or your financial life or, your relationships, your social life, you know, if you're doing too much of anything, if you're spinning your wheels and creating all of this exhaustion by trying to keep up in one area, you're going to burn. It's going to cause something to happen. There's going to be combustion. And that combustion for me at that time was I wasn't nurturing the spiritual side of myself, the side of myself that cares deeply for people, the side of myself that wanted to see human to human without the veil, without the mask, or without the mascara. I feel so grateful. Like now, 20 years later, yeah, I remember there was a time, not then, because then as an editor, I didn't wear any makeup, but I remember there was a time, perhaps even less than 3 years ago or 4 years ago, I wouldn't come on, you know, a a podcast without having glam. They're just different pieces of yourself that start to matter less and other pieces matter more. And I think it's just being willing to question and have the curiosity to ask yourself what that looks like. And that's what I'm trying to do right now, even as, quite frankly, Lisan, like my first burnout was at 26. I definitely had another one at around 36 or 37. And I'm just getting over another one. Like, but I also think it's cyclical. Like I think that's the other thing. It's recognizing that burnout doesn't have to mean the demise of you. It doesn't have to mean the end of everything. It could actually be the catalyst for renewed kind of purpose, renewed focus, renewed appreciation for how you move and what you do with it.
Absolutely. This idea of showing up for yourself back for me in the earlier parts of my career, showing up for myself really meant showing up for other people. It was very externally driven. Showing up for myself meant accomplishing things in within a corporate environment at the time. It meant doing all the things, being all the things to all the people.
Hmm.
And it meant um, really not focusing as much on my own emotional and mental well-being.
Mhm.
It meant being able to serve um, to perform and not be kind of sidetracked by the little things like my emotional health
Yeah.
and my mental health, right? Just like getting it done, making sure that I was getting it done. And that was at at the earlier part of my career, what showing up really looked like. And then I too had this moment. And I think I was trying to think of when, I think it was like in my early, maybe my late 30s. And I remember having this, um, it was my early 40s actually. I remember having this moment in corporate where I had always been, I've always been pretty evenly temperamented
Mhm.
and pretty happy for the most part. I'm a smiley kind of person, and I would kind of blow past things because it was really about getting the job done or getting the thing done or helping my friends or helping other people. And I had this moment where I was getting ready to file for divorce, very close to it. And I had a death of someone that I loved very deeply. And I just had like this cluster of a few things happen. And suddenly I felt like I was losing my footing in life and in my professional world, which was always the place where I felt a lot of control. I always felt like whatever's happening in my personal life, that's different. But in my corporate world, it felt like something that I could do and that I could do really well. And I had this time where that just wasn't the case in the same way. And I was starting to feel teary eyed at work. And I remember going in to speak to a leader who, at the time, I considered a mentor. And I remember sitting in his office and we were talking about something and I burst out crying. And he didn't know what to do with that
Of
emotion
course. I mean,
in the work.
especially at that
Oh
time.
my
Yeah.
goodness. No, he had no idea. And I remember like looking at his face and having him, you know, I'm making assumptions about what he was thinking, but it was like this, like, there's a woman in my office crying, like, I don't even know what to do. And it was funny because it wasn't just, that one person. There was no space for my humanity within this corporate environment.
Yeah.
And it's not a judgment, it's just the way things were at the time in that particular organization. And actually, in many organizations, that those were the conversations that my girlfriends and I were having when we'd go out to dinner. It was about work, but in a very non, you know, success was really holding yourself away, holding your humanity away from the goals and objectives that you were in the workplace to accomplish.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And I remember that it changed everything for me.
And thank you for sharing. It's so interesting though, because one of the words that I picked up on that you said very early was perform. And I think that this idea of performance is so, you know, is so riddled with all of these things, like because you want to show up,
Of
you
course.
want to provide, you want to be able to endow in some way. But this idea of performance and it makes me think about, and just obviously working, entertainment industry adjacent, the idea of like, the show must go on. Yeah, the show can go
Exactly.
can go on, but for how long can the show go on? And if we're constantly performing in unrealistic ways and to unrealistic expectations that we either have created for ourselves or that we've accepted as truth from other people. Now, and then the question becomes then is like, what's the difference in expectation, performance, and being accountable to showing up in ways that you
Mm,
should be able to show up because you do have resource, because you do, you are skilled, you have talent and that sort of thing. But the idea of performing constantly is never going to be healthy, for anyone,
Absolutely.
and it will definitely lead to burnout and or exhaustion or a combustion of some sort. And so I think that that's also really important. Like, even if we're performing at work, then we need the time when we're not performing. We have to be able to, if we're performing a task that we have to do in order to manage our household, we need time not to perform a task, because overperformance is never going to be good.
Absolutely. And it's really living in personal integrity.
Mm,
You cannot expect yourself to be in this performance mode 24/7 and to also feel filled. It doesn't make sense. It's like you get into a car, you run out of gas, that car's going nowhere. And I think that we forget that we too need to be filled.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm very clear these days, and that I need to be filled. Sometimes I am, in real time trying to reconcile and appreciate how to show up and perform in quotes, and deliver what I believe I'm meant to deliver, what I'm called to deliver, and and then how to take that proper rest. And I guess the question that I'm constantly kind of challenging myself with even now is like, you know, is the delivery of this, is it going to impact? Is it going to create an impact in the world, in the space that I'm in? Is it necessary? Is there someone else who can share this with me? And or is there someone else who is better suited to do it? Right? Because it's all those things. Because I think sometimes, you know, we think that we're the only person to do it. So my driver now is like, is it going to have the impact? And that's actually the times that I don't get things done that I'd like to get done and to achieve. I have to say to myself, well, it's because it wasn't necessarily that can wait until tomorrow. It can, you know. And so asking ourselves those pieces, I think, really helps to put us in a place of consciousness around how much we're doing, what's essential, what's not essential, if there's someone else that can share the load with us, and or if there's someone else better suited to do it, so we don't burn out.
Right. And it's hitting that pause button to ask,
Yeah.
to just stop so that you can have that conversation with yourself. Tell me, for those folks who are, because we're talking about situations that may have happened at different times of our life. Tell me, do you mind sharing, like, what did you do? So you kind of went through these couple of periods in your life of burnout. I have, many of us do. But for some, they're kind of encountering it for the first time,
Yeah.
or the second or third time, and they're kind of like in this space. What do you do to come out of that?
Each burnout situation, I think, was different for me because I was at, obviously different vantage points in my life, had different resources, had different responsibilities that were like the must things to get done. The first time I made a shift professionally, because I knew that that was where a lot of my pull was coming from. The majority was not me feeling purposeful in the work that I was doing, and knowing that I needed to discover that for myself and understand that for myself. And that work actually in Newark, when I left magazine publishing and I went to Newark and started working at this comprehensive high school and working with kids from Newark and working in the school system, like, that gave me a new sense of purpose that I never even knew I would ever, it could even be a possibility, even though my parents are educators in Newark. So I come from the family that, is communal in the sense of teaching and learning in the community. But I never thought that was going to be my truth. But I realized that teaching and learning and connecting meaningfully is a part of who I am. And also, it gives me a wonderful sense of purpose for myself and what I'm sharing with people, but also what I illuminate and gain from others. And that's morning mindset with Tai, quite frankly. it's being a, a mirrored teacher, and not because I have more insight or intel. I have my own experiences, but as do other people. And so I discovered that. The other time I went through burnout, it came more because of a cacophony, quite frankly, of a lot of things I was dealing with at the time. I was a caregiver to my grandmother alongside my mom for um, full time. I was a caregiver to her for 11 years. And then I started to caregive for my great uncle, her brother, with my mom. And that took its toll because I was running a business, um, trying to, live my life, even though a lot of my life was work, while taking care of the person who raised you, which was very, very hard. And so that burnout actually came when I started to realize that as my grandmother's life remained extended, which we were grateful for, even though it was very long to see someone in that state for as long as it was,
Mm-hmm.
it started to make me question my mortality. Because here I became a caregiver at 28, and, going to see my grandmother 4 to 5 times a week, driving from New York City back to New Jersey, landing, from flights going straight to the nursing home or what have you, started to make me ask about my life and my health and my well-being. I had started to put on weight. And so that burnout was both physical, and then emotional. Whereas the first one was really professional. That really challenged me to think a lot about my own emotion. And so with that, I was coming out to LA for for a lot of work because I was doing a lot of television at the time. And so I would come out here for like 3 months at a time and shoot a show, and then, go back to New York. And I started to feel the ease of coming here. And so that's when I decided to move to from New York to LA. And so that was in motion for some time. And then most recently, I mean, and this wasn't, I mean, I don't know if this was really a burnout, more as maybe it wasn't quite a burnout. It was just like something's got to give. So the third
Yeah.
time I didn't quite get to a burnout. Let's put it that way.
Sometimes it's just that. Right, right. You learn something. It's like you see the signs like, this isn't going well.
This road,
it's time to stop.
Exactly. And
I've been here before.
It's like, this feels eerily familiar. Different reasons, but eerily familiar.
Always, yeah.
Yeah. And this had gone back to, different circumstances, but, working, in a lot, and trying to build, even my company, though 17 years old, it's a startup, it's a small business. And then launching Brown Girl Jane with my business partners, and doing both in tandem, where quite frankly, one, when you're working up in a startup business, and fortunately TLM and what I do has some legs under it, but that's how I eat for the most part. And, just was like, this is too much when you're literally working 14-hour days. And in doing so, recognizing that I'm missing out on another part of my life that I have yet to really, I don't want to say master, but lean into with love and with a real desire for it in my personal life. And so
Mm-hmm.
this, before getting to burnout, it's like I have to reconcile this. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm still working. So I this last time, what I did is I felt crazy doing it. And I literally asked my assistant as she was booking, I was like, is this crazy? Do you think I'm crazy to do this? Are you sure?
Those are the things you do. Those are the things you
crazy?
do. You're like, I don't know.
I'm like, but you start questioning it. And then sometimes you have to push through and take that leap, even if it feels crazy, even if as long as it's not harmful or dangerous. And as long as, I never tell anyone that they should quit their job just because I don't believe that we should, have to struggle to figure out some of our bare necessities. But I went to Bali for 7 weeks, and
you did.
yes, I did.
Every day I was like, oh, look at her in ball. It's nice.
I
Yeah,
I want
it seemed beautiful.
I want to go back. I want to go back. I really do.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
those are my three very different experiences with burnout, but I think or burnout or on the precipice of something else. And I think what it is that when you do radical things to arrive at a radical point in your life, radical destination, whether or not it's the job title that you've done all of the things radically to get there, whether or not it's the degree, whether or not it's the family, in order to shift your level of consciousness and how you operate, you usually have to do something radical or equally as radical. It doesn't have to be a mirror of the other thing. It doesn't have to be a polar opposite of the other thing, but it's radical. So my first experience with burnout, and I'm just sharing this as I crystallize it for myself, I sat in this beautiful ivory tower of magazine publishing. And as I got there, I was like, okay, this is great, but there's something human I'm missing. And then I went to my home land of Newark, New Jersey to work with children who may not know the ivory tower, have not experienced that radical. The other one, when I was, showing up as a caregiver and as an entrepreneur and business owner in New York City, where it's only hustle, 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 hustle hard, hustle harder, take care of. I moved to Los Angeles, where the space and the air is a lot freer and clearer. People don't work nearly as hard. I mean, or it's a different type of work. It's a very different energy. And then the same thing with, my decision to go to Bali, going from working, on two businesses and feeling like I have to be the provider of a lot of things and everything. And in Bali, I was tended to. So, sometimes I think, we don't realize how radical our actions are at that moment. But if we really assess like a specific place that we got to or we arrived to and we unpack it, we can go back and say, I made some radical decisions. I took some radical measures to get here. You're not going to just be able to say, I'm going to journal it away. It can be a piece of it. Yeah.
Right. But you really have to, like, if you're here, like, you have to really meet that with enough force to be able to move things in a different direction or to pull it back into the center, right? If you're way over to the left, you have to bring that pendulum back somehow. And you're not going to, like you said, journaling is wonderful. I have, done every single day for most of my life, most of my writing life. But not everything can be resolved through that. Sometimes you have to just pack up and move to the other side of the country or leave a job or, whatever those things are. They're also kind of efficient.
Yeah.
To do the radical things wind up being more efficient
No, I
over time.
agree. And
Yeah.
I think that we don't recognize the opportunity in some radical decisions and some radical movement. Um and I'm actually, now that I'm not in Bali any longer. I got back about 2 weeks ago. Um but trying to figure out how to apply those practices to my life here and still, haven't really figured that out, but trying
Well, I'm
to.
sure you're still processing it. You were there for quite some time, and it's only been a couple of weeks, and it takes a while for that pendulum to kind of stop swinging
This is true.
from, I want to be in Bali. I'm here. I got to, all of that. You work with a lot of women and you do amazing work with women and you also have these beautiful human conversations with people and they are all one thing about you that I observe is how centered you are in who you are and who God is in your life. Um, and how magical it is to watch that, especially, I myself, when I was in corporate, and I was in corporate for quite some time, one of the things that I noticed was that there was like this clear separation between humanity,
Mm-hmm.
spirituality,
Mm-hmm.
and work. Work was work. Work was everything, right? And everything that people did was really in alignment with getting work done. Um, and what I notice about you as a businesswoman and someone who is up to a lot of things, doing a lot of things, you've accomplished so much, you're building, your business, you're leading hundreds of other humans, and helping them. And you're always communicating and sharing God and sharing how God is showing up within and without you. Um, And I commend you for that, because a lot of, I commend the courage in that, and the humility
Mm-hmm.
in that, and in your authenticity and courage to show up as who you are, and in what you believe.
Mm-hmm.
And I always see you as like that person who just like, you exude the truth of who you are, no matter what that is.
That makes me so happy. And it humbles me too. And no,
Because you're showing up as you are.
it makes me so happy. Listen, like just to hear that,
Yeah.
like it brings me I won't even describe it of joy. It just brings me it it brings me like a nod of peace. And um so I'm grateful. So thank you for that. I mean, that's
You're seen.
yeah.
You're seen. Like, we see you, and you are making sure that you're seen. More importantly, right? I think it's really beautiful to be seen. And I think and not in competition, but I think it's beautiful to be seen. And it's equally beautiful, let's say that, to live a life where you are allowing yourself to be seen.
Thank you. It's not easy. It's not easy. But I do, it's I think the spirituality piece, and it's so interesting that you would say this because as I was like before I was preparing to go to Bali, I think maybe even before I committed that I was going to Bali, I called a dear friend of mine who is a friend and a big sister and a mentor in many ways, and is a COO at a major Fortune 100 company. And I said to her, I said, like, I'm grateful to be doing this. I love that I do this. I love that I do this, but almost doing a 360. Like, how do you see me? She's someone I trust. She's someone that
Mm,
has known me for 23 plus years. And I can say her name is AC Eggleston Bracey, who works with Unilever. But she's someone that I knew when I was a assistant, starting out in magazines. And I asked her, I said, how do you see me, AC? Like, because one thing is clear, like there are certain things I have no interest in doing anymore, even though I get calls to do them. And sometimes, you want to say yes because that check could be really, really nice. But, I've learned to say no, to just kind of stay anchored in where I am and with who I am. But I asked her very transparently, I said, who do you? She was like, Tai, there's just something about this spiritual piece. Like you make me see spirituality in a way where it doesn't feel contrived or forced, and I'm not using her words verbatim, but like, where it's this, but where it's, palatable. And it's a new understanding of wellness because you also are so engaged from a physical standpoint, in a mental and emotional standpoint. And she said it's because you lead with your truth and vulnerability
mhm.
around your love of God, your appreciation for humanity, sometimes with my Newarkness too, but like with with all of those elements.
Listen, that that Northeast help.
I
You can go anywhere in the
mean,
world.
I mean, I mean,
Seriously,
it just
it's
is.
all
It's gonna
good.
be what it's gonna be. Like it's gonna do what
Exactly,
it's gonna do.
always.
But like,
That's right.
but like, and I think that I think that that is really a gift that God has given me, and perhaps it's because I've had moments of incredible shine and blessing and highlights, and I've also had some incredibly low moments. And one of the things that I have learned, just in terms of emotional well-being, and this was something, that actually I was rereading Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty while I was in Bali. And I've read works like The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, and 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 Deepak Chopra. The key is that when you talk about humility, it's never to go here or there, to really try and find this space. And I don't like to call it balance or even equilibrium, but this place in the middle. So I will say this: I'm very seldom like super upset, and I'm very seldom super sad. Most of the time I'm here. There are moments that shifts. I'm completely human in that, but I think the goal in that is to kind of stay here. And so
I call that harmony.
I agree 1,000%.
In corporate, it's like balance, work-life balance, and I'm like, what does that mean? When that's not attainable, I don't see that as attainable.
I agree.
What you can do is be in harmony with what's happening in your life, and show up where you need to show up based on what's happening and what the needs are.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I see that kind of
I love harmony.
mid-ground. It's like being in harmony with your life.
It's exactly that. And I do think that it's important that we do that, and not just with things happening in our lives, but within our spirits, right? I do have, I have a practice every morning where I worship in the morning, usually before I go on to morning mindset. If I don't have time, then I do it immediately after. Um, but I try to stay here. Now there, like I said, there are some things that definitely don't sit well all the time, and I'm like,
Yeah.
but you tried it.
Here we
Here we
go.
go. But I think that that's the key. But I just thank you so much. I receive that, and that is my prayer, and not because really I want anyone to say like Tai has mastered this. I have mastered very little. I'm still growing, but because I think in those moments, when we see humanity in one another, we expand in our own humanity.
Mhm.
When we see humanity, when I see someone who is an incredible mother and I'm not yet a mom, I expand in my humanity when I observe that, when I take that in and really understand that. And so if what someone can take in from me is that I am doing my best to walk with God, and that they see that whether or not I'm in a corporate office or on the beach or in Bali or hosting, an event or producing a show, then that's I'm doing something right there.
You do a lot of work with women. What are you observing?
Now more than ever, it's our time. It's our time for women. I feel that, and I'm observing that women are at a precipice and a nadir at the same time, if that's possible. Because I know that's polar opposite, but we are at this pivotal moment of saying, like, here's where we can go, but we're also recognizing the things around us that have not served us and trying
Mhm.
to push through those things. Um, I also am so excited about what I see as women wanting to reprioritize themselves. Especially, I love seeing this for Black women, um, because historically it's something that we just were not able to do. We were not, it was a luxury to do so. Self care was a luxury, self love was a luxury, self time was a luxury, connection to, and all of it was a luxury, and I think about being at a point right now where you can say that you want to powerfully pause, whether or not it's for 2 minutes or 2 hours or 2 weeks. Now, granted, with that comes, we assume other things, right? We assume other experiences, but I am just so grateful that we are in a place where we're starting to acknowledge that that's the truth. And we are also being a lot more vulnerable in our conversations about it. Um, I will say, without saying too much, I had a breakthrough conversation with my mother today. And for that, I am grateful. And not just a breakthrough conversation between she and I, though I've been pushing and wanting those to happen. I feel like it was a breakthrough conversation that she's been having with herself. And
Mm.
as that's what I think is critical. And so for you to ask that question is really poignant and pointed at the same time, because I'm thinking about my mom in this moment, for her to realize that, a lot of what she's carried, she's tired of carrying. And now she's ready to make a decision, perhaps not to carry it, or not to carry it the same way, or to pick up other things. And that might be an easier load, or a more loving load, or a more compassionate load for herself. And I'm excited about that.
Good for
Yeah.
her.
So that's what I'm,
It's that choice. It's
yeah.
that choice. It's like I love the kind of the juicy part of female adulting, right? Where we get to sit with other women and we get to sit with the experiences of other women, our children, our mothers, our grandparents, whatever, and really see each other beyond the role that's been assigned to us
Mm,
or that's been assigned to our connection in this lifetime,
hmm.
but to really see each other as women,
Hmm.
So whatever that situation is, good for her.
Yeah. And thank you for
Good for
that. I
you,
think
Ty's mama. Yeah.
I'm proud of her. I'm excited for her, and I'm grateful for her, and I love her, and I'm excited for her to explore, um,
Hmm.
because like I think what you just said, for us to see each other as women, it's interesting because that's like one of the conversations we have all the time. She's like, until you have a child, and I get it, and I receive that. I receive
Hmm.
that, mommy. I
Hmm.
receive that, mommy. I receive
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
I receive that. And yet your child is 45 years old, and, has been holding a lot on her own for a long time. And so that
Hmm.
part of seeing each other as women, sometimes not to see each other in relation to who we perceive that person to be, or who that person has been to us, is,
Hmm.
you know, what then we hold them there, right? We don't allow them to kind of evolve and move beyond that. That's actually a really good reminder for me, because I think about some of the young people in my life, and I call them my babies and my mentors. They're like, nah, they're grown people. Yeah.
My mom passed away in a part of my, year of crazy or year of discomfort, I'd say. Back in 2008, my mother passed
I'm so
away,
sorry.
filed for divorce. Thank
Mm.
you. I left my corporate role, corporate life forever. I'm joking. But one of the things that was so interesting about, I remember with my mom, she had this thing she would talk about around something that happened in her life when she was 36. And so for years, up until maybe a couple of years past there, she would always kind of say, like, well, you don't understand because blah, blah, blah. And it would check me
Mhm.
because I was like, well, I don't,
Mhm.
I don't
Mhm.
understand. So I'll kind of leave that. And then I remember her talking about this thing. And I remember saying to her, hold on, mommy, that was 36. Like you keep talking about 36, but I'm now like 39 or whatever, whatever age I was at the time. And I'm like, hold on a second. Let's just talk about the thing, right? And it kind of changed the conversation a bit between she and I, because before then there was always this. And my mother, one thing that I really appreciated about her and still do is how much in truth
Mhm.
she was always willing to live
Mm, mhm.
and how generous she was um, in her ability to allow me to ask questions
Mhm.
and to speak how I felt about some of the decisions that were made before I had the chance to actually vote. Um, but there was this one thing that she was holding out on, and it was like this, it was a woman thing, right? And I remember like being a couple of years past there and saying, "Mommy, All right, let's just have this conversation because I'm not willing to accept that answer anymore. Like, I'm not willing to accept that, we're not going to talk about this because of my age, because I'm past that age, So I think that that reminded me
Yeah.
of the conversation that you had or that you're referring to with your mom.
I think intergenerational conversations are also so key. Um,
They're important.
yeah,
That's the wealth.
yeah,
We talk about generational wealth from the perspective of, finances, which is very important.
mm,
But intergenerational, emotional, mental, and physical health is the thing.
yeah,
And if you can work on that, you can have positive impact on the financial
yeah,
wealth and other things, right? So I think that we really, it's important to prioritize those, um, our humanity
absolutely, absolutely.
and our health.
I love how, the word human keeps coming up, and it makes me think about um, my my paternal grandmother, who also helped to raise me. She passed when I was very young, so I didn't have her as long as Mary, who I had the great fortune of taking care of with my mom. But my grandmother Sarah used to, when she would go and fill out, you know, um, paperwork, and it would ask race. She would create a new box that said human race and check that off.
I like that.
And it makes me,
Yes.
she was like, it would say black, white, I think maybe, Asian. It wasn't Hispanic on there for sure at that time.
Hmm.
She would just
Hmm.
write human. And today, it's like the idea of humanity being so important. One of the things I want to, I'm attempting to focus on is being a human being and not a human doing. So going back to that
Yes.
performance piece. And so when we think of our humanity, what makes us human? You know, it's our connection to understanding that there's divine power within all of us. That's not been arrested anywhere. Like God gives everyone, and I say this a lot. Like, it's always so interesting. People are often trying to look at other people's gifts and talents and skills, but God gave you something. And so, like what God
Absolutely.
gives us, the opportunity to move, if we can move our bodies, the opportunity to speak and share, the opportunity to feel connection, if we desire to, and yeah, I think the more we can focus on being human, but and recognizing that that doesn't give us a pass of showing up in our
Right.
humanity, right? Because we're still supposed to show
Absolutely.
up in our humanity. But that just came to me, the importance of being human.
And tapping into who you are. I think that, that's kind of where some of those breadcrumbs are. It's like, look within yourself. And there's so much that you can find in up in here. There's a lot up in here that you can tap into. And it's great because you can see the beauty and wonderfulness in other people, but understand that you have it too. So I could talk to you forever. And I do want to talk briefly about, or not so briefly, you have some things coming up. So don't you have a retreat coming up in
My gosh,
Bali?
I have,
Is that still
yeah, that is,
happening?
yes, that is happening. I'm so,
Well, you're going back to
I'm
Bali and you're bringing
going
some
back,
folks with
back
you.
to Bali. Um,
Yes,
I'm
yes.
so excited about that. So yeah, so we do the monthly hike series here in LA, the first Saturday of every month.
March 4th being the next
March
one.
4th is the
And
next one. Then the next one is
yes.
April 1. And unless, and we are traveling at some times when we have partners that want to bring us to specific locations. But on morningmindsetwithtai.com, you can check out and see when the next hike is. It's March 4th.
What is that about? If for folks who are listening, would you talk about it for a bit?
Yes. I mean, honestly, it's an experience. So it's called Morning Mindset, the Hike and Experience. And it is truly, so we have 4 pillars that we focus on. It's affirm, it's move, connect, and reset. So really kind of drawing on what are both spiritual, emotional, psychological, and physical um, well-being and wellness, right? And so we affirm ourselves, we affirm others, we move our bodies, we move with others, we connect with ourselves, we connect with God, we connect with nature, we connect with others, and then we reset. So that way we can ultimately do it all over again. And so I mean, the lineup for this next one is the biggest lineup that we've had. I'm like, am I crazy to have brought in so many incredible co-hosts? Because it's a full morning. So it's this is not come and hike and then disappear. It's a curated experience that is designed to really help you see yourself differently, help you to see yourself more aligned with God and Creator and Source, and whatever your belief is. Um, and to align with other people who are like-minded, because that's the other thing that happens when we start to do our own alignment or realignment. If we're not in community with people who support that, again, we lack accountability, we lack connection, and then we can't necessarily see ourselves as the divine mirrors of growth, that we are. And so I think community is just really important, and then movement. If you have a body and you have the opportunity to move, I just think it's really important for us to do. So the next hike is March 4th, and then the retreat in Bali is July 14th through the 21st of July. It's a week-long retreat. Is for women and their partners and others if they desire to bring them. We will not monopolize all your time. The point of this retreat is for people to come and feel community, to feel affirmed and aligned, and to connect with themselves and God and with nature, so that they can be reset and restored to go back to life and feel energized and invigorated. I'm super excited about the retreat, especially since I've spent so much time in Bali. I feel like I'm inviting people home with me. Um,
Mm.
and Bali is such a beautiful. Have you been?
I have not been to Bali, but I will tell you this because, I was feeling like I really need to get away. And I looked and I was thinking about going to Bali. I was like, I'm going to go to Bali, right? And then I was like, okay, all right, full disclosure, I was like, I am not in the space right now because I've been on so many planes this year. I did not want to be on a plane for 18 hours.
I overstand
It
that.
was, that was the one and only reason why I decided not to. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go to Hawaii
Yeah.
and then I'm going to go to Bali. I'm going to go to Hawaii and get the edge off.
When you're
Yeah.
ready to be on the plane, there is no place
Yeah.
like it. And I say
Yeah.
this, humbly, but also with some personal experience and I've had the
Mm-hmm.
most incredible experiences on the continent. I've traveled to 13 countries in Africa. I've traveled to Hawaii. I've traveled to, all parts of Europe. And Bali is just different because it is
It's been calling me.
that's how I felt. Lisane, that's how I felt.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just couldn't understand why
Mm-hmm.
it was calling me and why I had to be there, but I felt the need to be there. And I'm so excited for, I think we have probably about 15 more slots. We're doing a Zoom call about the retreat on March 9th. I believe it might be
Okay.
at 3 p.m. PST, but if you follow me on social and follow Morning Mindset with
Okay.
Ty, you can tap in there. I I want every Black woman and any woman, because I love all women and I want to just reiterate that, but I speak from the lens of
I share that.
knowing my Black woman experience. Um,
Absolutely.
but I want us to feel that peace. And I pray that we can feel it together, vibrate together with it and on it, and bring it back and hold on to it and live it. It is powerful.
I feel that. I feel that. I feel that desire in you. I feel your intention.
Mm.
I feel that.
So if you can
Yeah.
come, we would love to have you. And I'm going to encourage
Okay.
everyone to stay for as long as they can, because 7 days there truly isn't enough. It's not enough.
Yeah. Yeah. I would I have some ideas floating around in this head. And then a little shout out for Brown Girl Jane.
Little shout out for Brown Girl Jane. Um, I'm so grateful for what my Spelman sisters and I are building. We are a beauty and wellness company, leading with scent. When we started the brand, we were leading with supplements, and our hero ingredient was CBD. And now we are really kind of leveraging the importance of scent and technology that we have access to through our incredible partners, who help us to design our fragrances, that prove that scent has uh, neuroscientifically been proven to enhance and change your mood. We want women and people and humans to be able to experience a mood change and shift and elevation, um, like that. And so Brown Girl Jane, we're 3 years old. I founded it with my co-founders, Malika and Nia. We're sold at Nordstrom, Bloomingdale's, and Saks Fifth Avenue. And we are also sold at browngirljane.com. And we're really excited about the future. And yeah, so
Yes, yes. Is there anything else that you have going on that you want to share?
no, I'm just so grateful, and I'm happy that Lisan, you and I, this was perfect timing. I needed this at this moment, and am sending you so much love and gratitude for how you're shaping freedom, for your voice in the world, for what you do in the world, for your love, for your wisdom, for your insight. And I have a feeling like there's going to be some other stuff for us to do together meaningfully
For
to
sure.
really kind of
For
impact
sure.
community in a dynamic way.
For sure. Thank you so much. I know how busy you are. I know how busy you are, and I also know how important connection and really just like you said, helping women to feel peace and how important that is to you. I see how important that is to you, and I know that your time is incredibly valuable and you have a lot going on. And thank you so much for finding a space in your time, in your calendar, in your schedule to chat with me in this way. I really, really appreciate it so much. I love, love, love what you're up to in the world and on this planet, and how you are helping women to find their power within themselves,
That's
their
exactly.
love, yeah, their love and their authenticity within themselves. So thank you, thank you, thank
Well,
you.
thank you for getting me. That's
Yes, I definitely see
you
you.
see me. I
Definitely
love
see you,
it.
girl.
Thank you, babe. I'm so grateful. Thank you so much.
I could chat with Tai all day. I hope that you found today's conversation inspiring. Please check her out on The Morning Mindset with Tai on Instagram. And also check out Brown Girl Jane for some amazing and uplifting self care. I'll have a link to both in the show notes. Often, as women or just as nurturing individuals, we can get so caught up in taking care of others that we forget to take care of ourselves. I want to encourage you to be kind to yourself and to never forget to protect and nurture your own humanity. You may find it in a morning devotional, in a meditation, or in a journaling exercise, whatever helps you to connect to you. I encourage you to seek that out in your own way so that you can enjoy the harmony that comes with it. Thanks for listening.